Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today I'm talking about movie music, soundtracks, and original scores, OSTs, original soundtracks. So basically, the music that goes along with our films. This would be the score, the official score, the music that's playing in the background of the movie, as well as the soundtrack that they sell you that has tracks from the movie that were played in the movie or inspired by the movie or whatever. I'm a big fan of soundtracks, even if the song isn't in the movie, if it's inspired by the movie or reminiscent of the tone of the movie. These are pretty cool. I love soundtracks. I'm working on a top 25 list of the greatest soundtracks of all time, but this is very difficult because soundtracks are, well, they're all great, you know? And a handful of soundtracks made my list of top 25 greatest albums of all time already. Um, so a good movie score can make a bad, mediocre, or okay movie better. A terrible movie score can make a great or good movie lesser. Um, so it is important to have a score that fits the subject of the film. It has to fit the mood of the film, the tone of the film. An example of one that doesn't. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master, uses a lot of like post punk, kind of 90s sounding, almost grunge, not quite grunge music in a movie that was made in 1988. But it's a slasher movie, and it just feels so out of place for a slasher movie. It just doesn't fit. Slashers either have like synthy kind of music, or they have hair metal soundtracks, or they have like, classical movie soundtracks like violins and orchestras and stuff. They don't work to me when they have like punk rock or pop or R&B or anything else, or disco. I'm looking at you, Friday the 13th, part 3. Um, I just think that the soundtrack has to fit the mood of the film. I just watched Jurassic Park last night, and the Jurassic Park score definitely builds tension and sets the mood of the scene that you're in, and is very appropriate to the images on screen. This is also famously what is Star Wars is known for. Also, John Williams. Star Wars is famously known as a movie that was saved by the soundtrack. Um, and it helped. It definitely helped. If you watch Star Wars, if you can find a print or a version of it that doesn't have the soundtrack playing in the background, that's a boring ass movie. It needs the soundtrack in the background. It really sets the mood of the film, the tone of the film. And then you have movies where the soundtracks are just like pop songs that get you pumped for the action. Some popular ones would be Ghostbusters is a popular one. Top Gun is another really famous one. Uh, but like, aside from Guardians of the Galaxy, which had its awesome mix, volume 1, 2, 3, etc., you don't really have a lot of big movie soundtracks these days, it seems, that are like standalone albums, like have big cultural significance. A lot of times it's just like a collection of songs that were in the movie that nobody fucking cares about or remembers, or it's just like they don't even bother with soundtracks anymore because, like, everything's on Spotify anyways. So no one's going to buy the album, so why bother? And a lot of movies, especially like your big blockbusters and your action movies, they really rely heavily on classic tunes like 80s power metal and arena rock to get people pumped up. They don't usually have soundtracks that are tailor made for the movies anymore. It's a lot of retro 70s and 80s and even some 90s songs just thrown in there for nostalgia purposes. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Um, I don't have any examples off the top of my head of when it didn't work well. Um, but I have a couple examples where it actually did work well. One would be Adventureland. The soundtrack really accompanies that movie. And the second one would be Bumblebee. That movie definitely benefited from an '80s soundtrack, for sure, for sure. Um, the rest of the Michael Bay Transformers movies, I don't know what the fuck is going on in the background. The music is just like the shit on screen. It's just all fucking noise. It's chaos incarnate. And it's too fucking, it's sensory overload. Those movies are sensory overload. I don't know how anyone can watch those movies and parse out what's happening. I just don't understand it. It's just a blur of noise. But that's another topic for another day. Um, Movie soundtracks also used to, now they don't do television soundtracks as much anymore because television shows by and large don't have theme songs anymore. Um, I mean, the like 30 seconds of synth music in front of Stranger Things isn't going to really fill up a CD, if you know what I mean. The rest of the soundtrack is, again, just your typical 80s pop hits, which you can buy any number of compilation CDs to get those pop hits. They're literally fucking everywhere. Which is one of the reasons why I wasn't impressed with the Guardians of the Galaxy Awesome mixtapes. Because it was just like, yeah, it's literally every song that plays every commercial break ever since the beginning of time. All the songs you've heard a bajillion times before, nothing to get pumped up for. Look, maybe 50 years ago, Bad to the Bone was a good song, but it's played the fuck out nowadays. Nobody wants to sit and listen to Bad to the Bone anymore because they're either going to immediately think of Terminator 2, or if they're my age, they might remember Problem Child, but they're probably going to think of Terminator 2. Nobody just listens to that song and gets pumped up and like, yeah, Bad to the Bone. Unless they're like 75 years old and they were a teenager when it came out. And I don't know if they can even hear the music with their hearing aids or not. I don't know. I'm not trying to be a bitch, but you know, come on. 75-year-old people aren't just sitting around listening to music anymore. So, a good movie soundtrack can definitely make a good movie, but sometimes the soundtrack has nothing to do with the movie at all. It's just random songs that the filmmaker wanted to put in the movie but couldn't get licensing for, and just like fits it accompanies the movie. This was more popular in the 90s, especially. A lot of times you would get soundtrack 2.0 or more songs from the movie and things like that. They did The Matrix and the Mortal Kombats, especially. I think Can't Hardly Wait did this as well, and I think Clueless did as well, where it had two soundtracks, but don't quote me on that. There were other movies, teen movies especially, that did that. That used the soundtrack to that movie as an excuse to just collect together a bunch of pop rock top 40 hits from that year. A lot of times. With a couple of 80s bangers thrown in there just for good measure. For whatever reason. Because it seems like we've been obsessed with the 80s literally since the 80s. It's almost like pop culture peaked in the 80s and we just haven't moved on from that. I don't know, whatever.